Yes, so my presentation looks at securing quality through the planning system and how the National Model Design Code sort of fits into that. And that's the current planning system we have, not the one that's suggested in the planning white paper. So to me, good design is a key aspect of sustainable development and is indivisible from good planning. This well-known line from planning guidance over many years has now been lost, which I think is a real shame as it decouples that important link. The focus now seems to be on the appearance and aesthetic value of design rather than sustainable function. So design guides and codes are no silver bullet for securing place and design quality. And until we start planning strategically and within a sustainable development-led approach, working towards zero carbon, we'll continue to build the wrong developments in the wrong place. So there's obviously something wrong when the planning system gives us this, and it also gives us this. So whilst it's unacceptable to have such poorly designed developments, a lot of these developments also have very poor or no green infrastructure and have led to more loss of nature and a negative environmental impact. So there's been a policy failure to deliver design quality. And for me, one of the key failings is the inability to plan and design in a green setting. So it's interesting to look at this really, because what do the statutory and policy requirements actually require planners to do? Well, we're only actually required in our local plans to identify allocations on a proposals map with a red edge, what I call the blob. And our system also, in terms of the development management order, only requires a red line to be submitted for outline planning applications with an indication of where access is going to be taken, if that's a reserved matter. And then a design and access statement that in the worst cases just describes a poor layout with lots of illustrative material. So how do we planners try and secure design quality through the planning system? Well, to address those failings, lots of planning authorities try and go above and beyond to try and secure quality. And a key tool for authorities is the Masterplan. So the Masterplan is the most common design tool used by local authorities. And the Masterplan is the spatial interpretation of a vision. But it's not produced in one stage, it's produced in a staged or cascade approach, which is undertaken aligned to the planning and delivery process and the technical and viability evidence. So it fixes increasing detailed amounts of spatial and design instruction at each stage. Just to quickly look at those stages. So area framework plans are produced as part of a local plan, and these set out high-level structuring and organising principles for an area or a site in a spatial diagram, which is based on a proportionate evidence base. And this is an example from a local plan, the Plymouth local plan around Derriford. So this framework plan is providing the same in relation to a commercial district centre that requires major redevelopment. So it's setting a framework, not a code, a framework to guide further design development when technical information and market conditions allow. So this is a framework plan for a new garden community. This is a framework plan to support a strategic site allocation in a local plan. And this is a framework plan to support a master plan SPD. So we do design, we do plan in local plans. It's not just all about words. We do try our best to get, area-wide and site-specific plans in place to give clear instruction on design issues. So in terms of sort of outline planning applications, if a development requires an EIA, then parameter plans need to be produced to enable the environmental impact to be assessed and mitigated. So parameter plans can, at the local authority's discretion, also be used to fix design matters, but legislation doesn't require this. So in terms of design codes, they're frequently used at the moment in practice, usually for large sites, more than 500 units, either site-wide as this well-known design code at Upton shows, with a regulating plan and clear design instruction. Or for very large sites, they're produced on a phased basis. And they can only be implemented if a detailed master plan has been produced that provides the spatial vision accompanied by a regulating plan. So that's the plan on the right here. And they're most commonly produced at the moment as a pre-commencement condition on an outline permission, but they can also be adopted as supplementary planning documents. But importantly, they are produced close to the point of delivery when there's sufficient market and technical information available. And finally, reserved matters. So in terms of the steps that the government could take to better embed place and design quality in the planning system, it could require local planning authorities to produce area and site-specific master plan frameworks in their local plans that would then receive full policy weight and they could also change the development management order back to how it used to function in 2006 with a set of parameter plans to fix design quality, and these would be needed to validate outline planning applications, together with a complete rehaul of the design and access statement system, so they actually fix design, instruction and intent. So how does the National Model Design Code change things? Well, it's not introducing anything particularly new. It's based on lots of previous guidance that's been produced in the past. It's obviously been updated. In terms of implementing such area and site-wide codes, NPPF, as to be amended, requires local planning authorities to prepare design codes or guides, and these should be produced as part of the plan or as a supplementary planning document. So importantly, NPPF isn't going to say local authorities have to produce codes. They can just produce a guide. And that's an important point. So in terms of how do we actually embed these guides and codes within the current system, don't worry, I'm not going to read through this table. My view is that it would be challenging to integrate a design guide or code into a local plan. I'm not convinced it would easily pass the soundness tests with its focus on viability and delivery, a need to produce a robust evidence base, and for policies to be written in a clear and unambiguous way. It would be possible to set out in strategic policies in a local plan where master plans and design codes should be produced on an area-wide or site-specific basis, and that currently happens in practice anyway. So adopting a design guide or a code as a supplementary planning document is the most sensible route to ensuring it receives sufficient weight in the decision-making process as a material consideration, but you'll need a policy hook to be able to do this. So requiring better design documentation to support planning applications is possible at the moment at the local authority's discretion, and local planning authorities can obviously attach requirement for a site-specific design code as a condition. So some final observations that I have on the National Model Design Code are firstly related to terminology. There's a new definition of a design code in the guidance that differs from the definition in the National Design Guide and NPPF. And this new definition seems to decouple the design code from a master plan. Design guides and codes are used together throughout the document, but they're very different things, and a code needs a regulating plan and a guide does not. Parameter plans are used a bit out of context, which could be misleading. And I think there's an underestimation of the analysis required to accurately fix design instruction, especially for large sites. So this table and these plans set out sort of typical information that you need really to be able to fix sort of design, decision-making and instruction, particularly for larger sites. So I think there's a bit of an oversimplification of the master planning and coding process for larger sites. And there's a lack of reference as well to other planning and environmental legislation that design decisions can impact on, and how this would be taken account of in the coding process. So the area types that are set out feel a slight oversimplification of reality. I think many areas straddle these zones and need comprehensive redevelopment, and coding them would be a superficial exercise without the evidence and master planning and market realism required. So there's a risk of coding, I think, leading to a traditional approach as well, that might not necessarily embrace working towards zero carbon and using environmental technologies. So finally, from a sort of planning perspective, a town and country planning perspective, I find the guide a little bit too urban design led, which you might not want to hear. And I'm not convinced that the street, the block and the public square should be the primary organising components for new places, especially on greenfield sites. And I don't think this has worked. So I think we need a more landscape-led approach that prioritises spaces and routes for people and nature, and that green infrastructure is used as a key structuring element in how we plan and design, rather than a second thought. This will help restore nature, mitigate and adapt to climate change, and restore public life, reconnecting people to each other and also with our environment. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Helen. I like your call for more integration of landscape and the environment. I think we've all experienced how important it is in the last year.